Actually, I talked about most of these in my last video, except for like two of these. I haven't been reading much since my last update, but I managed to get most of my December reading list, except for just a few, so there's still a lot in the stack, and I can kind of glaze over them and talk some more. Batman Haunted Night, just, anthology Halloween story, same team as the Long Halloween and Dark Victory, Tim Sale and Jeff Loeb. I think this one is just okay. It's not really required reading by any way. I think it's on a lot of Batman reading order like lists, but personally, you could probably skip it. Batman Volume 10 Nightmares. This is from Tom King's Rebirth run. Yeah, I read the run maybe 10 years ago originally. I never finished it. I had this one, and then the next two are The Fall and the Fallen, and then The City of Bane. And then I also know that like the Batman Catwoman 12 issue like miniseries is technically a part of this run. There was like a whole thing. He wanted to write like 100 issues of Batman, but they got canceled. So he had to do his remaining issues in like a mini series. Batman and the Signal. Definitely give this a shot if you like Duke Thomas or if you are interested in Duke Thomas, because I'm pretty sure this is the first, like as far as I know, this is the first time he becomes the Signal. So there's a lot of like good stuff in there. Uh, I wish there was like more of him in general, because like the way that this book kind of ends and the way it sets up stuff is like, oh, it's opening a whole new world for Gotham and for Duke. And then we really just never see him again after this. I think he really deserves like a solo ongoing series, but I don't know if they'll ever give that to him. I think they should at least do something with him, because I think he's just doing nothing right now. Wonder Woman Tempest Toss. This was just kind of for a younger audience, but I still really enjoyed it. There's a lot of good meat in here, a good story. It's just like a reimagining of Diana's time coming to man's world. Batman number 4. I'm enjoying this to a degree. I think there is some stuff I'm iffy about, but it's hard to really have concrete opinions this early. But I will say I'm leaning towards liking it more. I'm not really sure what the theme is or what Matt Fraction's going for in the story. I really like Jorge Jimenez's art, at least. But, I'm kind of like wondering where this is supposed to be going. I'm getting the vibe that it's supposed to be about an aging Gotham. But it's really hard to tell this early on. Night Fight number 2, this was Jason's issue. I think next time we will get to see Tim's issue, which I'm very curious about how they'll do a future Tim Drake. Tim hasn't really been focused on that much recently, and I wonder what his Gotham will look like. That'll be really interesting. Like, I haven't read much Tim Drake solo stuff or Young Justice or anything, but personally, I see Tim as like Bruce's perseverance side, his like unwillingness to give up the mission, so to speak. Like, it's not really like Tim is the detective, like he is, but that's not really what he should be known for. For me personally, I think it's more like kind of his like relentlessness to give up. Like when he was first introduced, he like took it upon himself to find Dick Grayson and try to like tell him to go back to Batman. He's like really encouraging like to tell Batman to do this, and then like I think when Bruce Wayne died, like he took it on his own hand to find Bruce because he didn't believe that Bruce died. So like there's this relentless nature of like I must do the mission kind of thing with Tim Drake, and I kind of feel like that should be focused on more. Batgirl 14. The more I think about this series, the more it makes me sad because I like Cassandra Cain, but I don't like this direction that she's being taken in. There's like this ongoing trend of like Asian characters have to fight Asian threats. And sometimes that works, sometimes there's like merit for that, sometimes the story is good enough for that. But for here, it feels so random. She has like no ties to this threat, and it's supposed to be that she has ties to it, but really it's just like because she's Shiva's daughter, and that's it. There's no personal stuff for it. And then she's getting a lot of like PTSD flashbacks, which I feel like Cassandra Cain is beyond that at this point, like in her story. So I really need this arc to wrap up, this story to wrap up. I need something new for Cassandra Cain. I don't want this series to be canceled. I just want something new for like a solo Cassandra Cain ongoing. Birds of Prey 28. I can't stop talking about this because it's really, really good. Highly recommend it. Kelly Thompson is still writing Absolute Wonder Woman, and that's definitely really good, and that's not getting canceled. But this one did, which is really sad because this is probably one of DC's best ongoings, or at least it was. I highly recommend anybody jump into Birds of Prey. It's pretty good. And you don't really need to know any prior Birds of Prey knowledge. They're not like heavily reliant on past lore. Of course, there's like references and stuff, but like everything is more in the present. Especially because Barda and Cassandra Cain are newer members to the team, so you don't need to like worry about the dynamic between those characters and Black Canary and Barbara because they're new. But yeah, highly recommend anybody who wants to read Words of Prey to do it because it is pretty good. Support the trade. Maybe it'll come back in some way or another. We will see. Batman the Demon Trilogy. I've talked about this a lot, but you know, probably of its time. It was like made decades ago. But there's a lot of good meat in here, Damien's sort of retconned and non-retconned origin story, or I guess the origin of his birth, not really of him necessarily. There's a lot of cool stuff to be pulled from the Bride of the Demon, the second story, a kid being brought back to life, kind of a precursor to Jason, which nobody ever mentions, but uh, maybe some really good Jason Todd writer will come around the corner in the next decade and mention it. And then we get some Ra's al Ghul origin stories, which I thought was cool. But I'm really hoping to see just more of the Ra's al Ghul and Talia and the League of Assassins. We get more like Damien content like all the time. Damien's really big fan favorite, so I'm sure they'll come back in bigger and better ways. But I like seeing dedicated stories for Ra's al Ghul and Talia and the League. I think there's a lot to utilize with that kind of corner of the DC universe. And it would be fun if they come back to it in more of a modern take. Batman: The Court of Owls saga. Um, this one I haven't talked about yet on YouTube, but it is pretty mixed bag for me personally. I like the way it starts. It has a really good start. Um, you know, barring any New 52 like retcon stuff. But this, like, once you get halfway through, it just kind of falls flat, and then the very ending of this, it really, really like falls flat. Whole thing about Lincoln March, I have a lot of issues with. Whole thing about the way the Court of Owls even operates, the concept of talons, like, there's a lot of things really weird about it. And I don't like personally, as a Dick Grayson fan, as you can see here, I don't like the way he's so sidelined in a story that's supposed to be like pushing him to an importance, like a certain level of importance, because it's like he shows up every few moments in this story. He gives Batman a pep talk, and then he just like leaves. Like he doesn't really help fight really, or help with any of the detective work. He's doing whatever it is he's doing in this New 52 run, which I haven't read but I own. But I am gonna read that one next. So that was really weird to me. I don't really like his red suit either. Like I know they were trying to consolidate stuff, but a big point of Nightwing is that he has moved on from Batman. Like that's what happens when he becomes Nightwing. He's moving on. So to be keeping this red theme felt very weird. But yeah, I did find out that this was originally supposed to be a Dick Grayson story, back when he was Batman, but then, Flashpoint rebooted everything, so they had to reset to Bruce, and then they had to give this storyline to Bruce, just, I guess, because. I definitely can tell this would have been, like, 100 times better if it was Dick Grayson's story. Like, he's so interwoven into the Court of Owls kind of mythos that it's like, yeah, I think if he was the main character, this would have made more sense and kind of felt a lot better, which is really sad. And we don't get any more Dick Grayson Batman stories nowadays. Like, we have a lot of stuff that goes backwards, like, Batman and Robin Year One, or like Robin and Batman Jason Todd. We get a lot of like stories that are like about that era, kind of like of Dick Grayson or of Robin's, but we never see more stories of him go back as Batman, which I personally would like to see more stories like written today, just like miniseries of just Dick Grayson as Batman, either solo or with Damian. Um, I personally miss that era, and I want more stories of him as Batman. But speaking of Dick Grayson, we have Nightwing 133. Um, I'm enjoying this series, actually. I really like the villains. I think it would be really cool because they have the Zanny and Columbina for this first arc. It would be cool if Dan Watters for the next arc could do other, like, I forgot what it's called, other people of that, like, comedy theater. Um, If we could see a Capitano, a Pantalones, I think that would be really, really fun. Just kind of like this overarching thing with Dan Waters, this run to be just full of those types of villains. There's no like I'm not basing this off of anything besides the fact that Columbina and the Zanny are in the first arc, but as a fun little theory to throw out, that would be really cool to do. Give him more rogues gallery in that kind of vein. This issue specifically, though, is really fun. I like Martian Manhunter showing up, everyone giving him a pep talk, everyone in his immediate circle, I guess. And then I'm really curious about the next arc because I think this one will wrap up in 2 more issues. So I think I'm gonna have a lot of fun with the next arc. From what I can surmise, the previews and what we've heard about it, I think that'll be a lot of fun. I'm enjoying this one a lot. This is probably also one of my favorite current runs right now. We'll see how that is once this arc wraps up and we get a new one and the new artist as well. But I'm optimistic about it. I think it'll be fine. But yeah, that's everything I read in December. I do have some plans for January and the months to come. Not necessarily like anything concrete outline, but I have some ideas that I think will be a lot of fun. So, be on the lookout for that. More fun content and not just regular updates. At least that's the idea. We'll see how much time I actually have to do any of that stuff. So no promises there, but we're going to try. Other than that, that is everything I read in this month. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys have been reading, and Happy New Year.